and welcome to this week's episode of Life Matters TV with David McLeod and Tommy Stoffel. Today's discussion is going to be around fear. We're going to talk about a little bit about fear, what fear is, what fear isn't, and how to overcome fear. And what that leads to is is a degree of confidence that some of us maybe don't have as much of as we'd like. So we're going to explain how to build confidence by breaking down some of the walls that get between us and our confidence and our ability to really be our authentic selves. So I'd like to introduce David McLeod. And David, why don't you say hello and take it?
Well, hi everybody, and thanks, Tommy. I appreciate the introduction. I'm going to take my glasses off so people can actually see my face here. You know, I think fear is a really big problem in our world. It's something that doesn't just affect us individually, but it affects us on a planetary scale. And I think it doesn't take much to look at you know, headlines in the news or to listen to what's going on in the world to realize that fear seems to be a dominant energy that is impacting everybody everywhere on the planet. And so part of what's important to me, I think, is I know that I can't change how other people feel, but one thing I can do is I can change my own feelings. I can work on my own emotions. I can work on my own issues, and I can recognize when I'm feeling fear and start to say, okay, how is this serving me and how is it not serving me? And I think that's actually a really important point, because fear isn't a bad thing. Fear is something that can actually protect us and keep us safe from actual and real dangers in the world. But the problem is, as I see it anyway, is that we often have fears that are based on things that maybe aren't real at all, or if they are real, have very small impact on our lives. And so consequently, we're allowing these minor risks to keep us from showing up more fully in the world.
Yeah, you've great intro, David, and way to open it up. I'm going to take a little bit of a different twist here to start with and talk about the confidence. Talk about some confidence and a sense of security and a sense of contentment, all of which fear has the ability to mask and to bury and to hide. Those features are really features of a human being. Those are things we are. We are naturally confident. We are naturally content. We are naturally secure as a human being in ourselves. And what I like to sometimes say when I talk to my students about this is that's what we are, and we have fear. It's almost like having an illness. And that's awesome news, because if we have something and it's a bit of an illness or something we picked up along the way, guess what? We can get rid of it. We can get rid of that and shed that aspect of ours that we've picked up, almost like these bricks we build, right? Bricks on the wall. We can break those down and shed those.
Absolutely.
And to do that, David, I'll lead us back to you, is what you said of what's maybe a real fear or danger, and then separating that from what maybe some people call a false fear. And there's an acronym that is false evidence appearing real for fear, right? Mm-hmm. So why don't you share a little bit about that part?
Well, I really like what you were saying about who we are. I think that's an extremely important point to make, and that's one of the things that I do. One of my major websites is called The Magic of I Am, and what I have noticed is a lot of people seem to limit who they are down to some things like, well, my name, the roles I play, the things that I do, and so forth. And they forget that they're actually much bigger than that. They're actually way bigger than that. And those are just things that we do from time to time because of who we are. And so it's a really great point that you bring up, that I am this, and I sometimes have this, or I sometimes have that, or I sometimes do this, or I sometimes do that. But all of those things are things that I do have or think or whatever because of who I am. And that's a really important point, and I don't want to just gloss over that and slide into the next point, because I think that's a crucial thing for us to remember. And I really want to make sure everybody on the call gets that.
Yeah, yeah, it's the essence of who we are, and we're amazing, powerful beings. So this fear is one of these things that we have, and it's one of the bigger ones that we have, kind of that can block us and block our authentic self, our confidence, our ability to be who we're here to be. And so let's tear apart this fear a little bit. Let's look at what it is and what it isn't. I put out an acronym that somebody told me a while back of false evidence appearing real. And there was a time when a teacher talked to me about fears, and they said, you know, there's real fears and there's what they call fake fear. And I said, fake fear? What the hell is a fake fear? And they went on to say, explaining that a real fear is a danger. You're in a dangerous situation, right? Now, we don't have tigers and lions chasing us around the savannah anymore here, but we do drive down the road once in a while, and God forbid a car, you know, swerves into our lane. Well, that's when our instinctual fear reaction mode kicks in, and we'll swerve, we'll do whatever we can to keep ourselves safe. Those situations happen so infrequently in our lives, yet we put so much barrier around ourselves to protect ourselves from all these things. And if we look at all these things in detail, if you sat down and listed the things that cause fear and cause concern and cause stress in your life, and you really list them out, you'll start to see that a lot of it's just in our head. It's imagination. It's things that we've come to believe or picked up from the Fear News Network, or something like that, and we believe it's going to happen to us. Well, really, day to day, moment to moment, you're pretty safe. If you look at your moment to moments, you're pretty safe most all the time.
Yeah, that's true. That's really very, very true. And the Fear News Network, I love it. That's great. And sometimes, you know, I have to admit, my own radio station, or my own radio, seems to be tuned to that radio station far too often. It would be nice to be tuned far more often to the Love News Network, you know, and to be able to get that energy filling me up, because that would serve me a lot more. Yeah, this is really, really good stuff that you're talking about, and I really, yeah, I'm resonating with it.
Nice. So I did this kind of little self-meditation thing a while back, and I thought about fear, right? And I thought about all these things I was afraid of, all these things that are, you know, the fears. And when that person told me that, you know, 99% of the stuff that we're afraid of is kind of made up in our head, I actually said, well, what the hell is that? You know, what is it in my head? And I did this kind of imaginary thing where I took the cap of my skull off and I looked down in there and I go, it's just freaking gray matter. It's just a little blob of gray stuff in there, yeah, with little synapses firing.
Yeah.
And really, is that what I'm afraid of?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Causing all this noise, all this fear belief and fear ideas running around in my head is just really synapses in my head. Am I to be afraid of that?
Well, you know, it's interesting that you should say that. I think something that came to me as I was thinking about this, because I did a similar thing. I was actually doing some meditating and just kind of listing all the things that I'm afraid of. And for each one of those, what I started doing was I started saying, well, so what is it that I'm really afraid of here? You know, I might have said something like, one of the fears that comes up for me sometimes is, I'm afraid that if I do this, people are going to think I'm stupid. You know, there's one that comes up. Well, so what's really the thing I'm afraid of underneath that? And what I realized is that for every one of these fears that I was able to name, there's actually an underlying, there's a thing underneath it that I think I really need. And so in the case of the one where I'm afraid that people are going to think I'm stupid, the underlying need is I believe I need people to acknowledge me as smart.
Okay.
And that is where the real fear is coming from. Because right now in my life, most of the time, people do acknowledge me as, you know, hey, I'm a pretty smart guy. But when someone disagrees with me or doesn't like something I'm saying or has a different opinion, my mind goes into the talk of, oh, that means you're stupid, you're wrong, you're not thinking right. And so what I'm doing is I'm believing that I'm losing the acknowledgement that I'm smart. And that's what the fear is really all about for me.
Yeah, man, you nailed that one on the head. And doing that root cause analysis is what you were doing. You know, looking for the root. What's causing this? What's causing that? And you get to the root cause, and you do find these common gems, these common anchors that are there. And I've done similar things, and I anchor back, and I find these anchors. They go back to childhood, dude. They go back to, you know, when we were little, and we're trying to get other people's approval.
Yep.
And then we go to school, and we're trying to get good grades, and you know, and we're getting approval whether we're getting good grades or not. And that just, in me, created a lot of fear. A lot of fear. I had this almost obsessive fear of forgetting. To your point of, you know, not being seen as smart. And I said, why am I so afraid of forgetting things? I hear something and I repeat it in my head like 20,000 times, and I'm thinking that's going to remember better. But I go back and I go, well, freaking A, I was trained for, you know, 20 years of my life in school that you got to remember this, and you got to study, and you got to take this exam, and you got to. So that fear is kind of bred into us.
Exactly. That's exactly my point. I think that we learn fear. It's not something that we're necessarily born with. In fact, I bet you there's very, very few things that we're just naturally afraid of. We might be able to count those on one hand. But the thing is, we are taught to be afraid over and over and over again by our teachers, our parents, our ministers, our policemen, our military, you name it. We're taught to be afraid. And the thing is, most of us, we buy into that programming. We accept it. We say, oh, this is just the way of the world. It's not a safe place. It's not okay for me to be here. I have to watch every step I make. It's freaking crazy. And you know, it brings to my mind another acronym for fear that I've heard and that is fuck everything and run.
And I can look at that two ways, right?
Oh, yeah.
In one case, that's the real danger, right? Like, oh, shit, gotta go. Yeah. But the other one is like, you know, really? All this nonsense? Like, give it up. You know, let's stop it and drop it and run to the happier side of life.
No, that's a good point. I hadn't thought of that one.
Because you said crazy. It is crazy. It is insane. Literally, you know, it's just stuff in our head that is going around in there that we don't know how it got in there. It's like a computer virus.
Yeah. Oh God, that's a great example. And in fact, I think really our brains are really nothing more than decoding mechanisms that are taking the waveform of the world around us and making sense of it in the only way that we know how. And the problem is we're not even seeing all of the information. We're only seeing a tiny little fraction of it, but we're constructing our reality based on that. And so, you know, we build this whole idea of fear into the construction that we're also building, and it just debilitates us. It makes us feel much smaller than we really are. It keeps us from showing up in the world. Yeah,
absolutely does, man. It's those filters, right? Yeah, it's the programming. It's like our heads are like computers, and that we pick up files, we pick up data, we pick up information. Some of it is good and true, and you know, we learn how to trust it. Others, they're corrupted files. You know, there's some beliefs in there that maybe don't serve us anymore. There were some ideas or impressions that we picked up along the way that are more harmful to us than they are good.
I like that analogy of the corrupted file, because it brings to my mind, when I think about a computer, and you know, when I first store a file somewhere, it isn't corrupted. You know, it has information, it's valid, and it makes sense at the time. But over time, things happen, and maybe the file gets shuffled around, or it gets bent, or folded, or mutilated, or spindled, as they used to say in the 50s. And so some of the information gets lost. And so the relevance of that file is really questionable in today's world. So it may have made sense for me to be afraid of speaking my mind when I was a kid, because who knows, maybe my parents used to beat the crap out of me, you know, if I disagreed with them or something. And so I was keeping myself safe by being quiet. Mm-hmm. But today, that's not happening to me anymore. So that belief no longer serves me. And it's time to, you know, look at that belief, dismantle it, and decide whether it works for me or not.
Yeah, we're adults now. We can choose to think and react differently and respond differently. And it just takes somebody like a coach or somebody to help us kind of find the roots to the weed. Find the path, find the root causes, find those files, and I know you're great at doing that and helping people with that, and so that's what we're here for. I want to. Earlier on, you started talking about the grand fear of the planet and the kind of this fear vibe. What we focus on manifests too. So what you're saying, it's important for us to shift our perspective. And going back to last week's discussion of what matters in life and to be the change. This is another aspect of this. Making a choice and asking to have more confidence and to able to understand and dissolve the fears is a brilliant thing to ask for. Mm-hmm. It's one of those brilliant things that you can ask existence for, and you'll start, the answers will start flowing in, because there's a fear factory out there, and there are industries and businesses that make their money on fear.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't take two clicks of your TV button to find a couple of them, that are just out there taking what are outlying situations. Very, of the population of this planet, the people that are really in a bad way right at this very moment is actually minuscule, and it's very small. But these, these fear news networks go out there and they'll just put it in front of your face over and over and over again. They'll find one, bad thing that happened yesterday, and they'll make you feel like you can't walk out your front door anymore.
And that's a really important point too, and I think that's kind of related to what I was getting to earlier, and that is, it's true that the planet is doing what it's doing, and that people on the planet are doing what they're doing. What it's also true is I can't change that out there. What I can do is change what's true inside me. And by simply deciding that I no longer want to feel fear anymore, or at least I want to diffuse the fears that are no longer serving me, by doing that and starting to connect more deeply to the love that just naturally flows through me, I am automatically reducing the fear in the world by whatever, that amount. But if I do it that amount, and you do it that amount, and then the two of us, we just kind of influence other people to do it that amount, what happens is the overall fear in the world starts to diminish, and love starts filling it in where it needs to come in. That's what I'm talking about here. But you can't change what you don't accept. We talked about that last week. Nothing changes until it becomes what it is. And if people aren't willing to recognize the truth, if they just want to go around and put their blinders on and put this premature positivity on their mind without actually doing the work inside, nothing's going to change.
Yeah, right on. And doing the work, especially in this one, pun intended, can be very scary.
Absolutely.
I address fear in my program, and I've had people say, I don't want to go there. I keep those things locked up for a reason. I don't want to look at those or face those. But I had a friend just last night give me yet another new acronym for fear. And I'll thank David Klein in advance here. And he said, face everything and recover.
Ooh, I like that.
And I'm like, I love that one.
That's nice.
Because that's what it takes. Facing your fears. And to face them, you first have to just think about what they are. And I like writing them down.
Yeah, that's great.
Like you said, you do that root cause analysis, and you and you keep facing them. That's what facing them is. You're looking at where they came from, where did this one come from? Oh yeah, when I was 2, this happened to me, and oh, really? Do I want to hang on to that anymore? Maybe not.
Yeah.
Face everything and recover. Brilliant, and I thank you again, David Klein, for bringing that one to my attention.
Well, I think that you've hit another point on the head, and that is, I can't do any healing at all of my life or my situation until I recognize what's there. So awareness is like the first step. Once I see something, then I can do something about it. Yeah, now, seeing it isn't quite enough. I also have to accept it. Remember, that was the thing I talked about before. You've got to accept it as what it is. Now, once you've accepted it, say, okay, I see what it is, and I accept it as it is. Now, what do I want to do about it? That's really what it all comes down to. Whether we're talking about fear or whether we're talking about anything, that's what it all comes down to. You know what?
That was so brilliant that I'm going to read it back and say it is, you know, because I totally agree. First thing we need to do is become aware of something, that something's not right, that we have something right that isn't naturally part of us, that we picked up along the way. So that awareness is always step one. And then, like you said, acknowledging it, coming to terms with it. To me, that's about understanding it. What is this thing? What is fear? And that's what we're doing today. We're understanding what fear is, what fear isn't, the impact it has on our life, the ways to let it go. And then you brilliantly topped off it with step number 3 is do something about it. You need to do something about it. Do a practice, do an exercise, do some writing thing, do something and have the experience, because that gives you the experience. We learn by doing, right? And that gives us the experience of what it actually feels like to have a little bit less fear. Like you said, you know, if I have a little bit less fear and you have a little bit less fear, and well, if I have a little bit less fear, I like that feeling. Yeah. And I want more of that. I want more of that less.
I like that. I want more of that less fear.
So,
yeah, I think that we're obviously very much in agreement here, and that is a good thing. And it would be okay if we disagreed too. I'm not afraid to disagree with you, and I'm sure you're not afraid to disagree with me. In fact, disagreement, what I have learned, is actually a great way for two people who have very passionate ideas to discover that, in fact, they both really want the same thing. And they maybe just have two different ways of getting to it, two different perspectives about what that thing is about. This is a beautiful thing, I think, because when I understand your perspective, even though it's like maybe even 180 degrees from mine, what I get out of that is an understanding, a bigger understanding of the world at large, because you're seeing a part of the world that I am not able to see from my standpoint, from wherever I am located in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's our perspectives. It's our, you know, we're all seeing this world through the lens and filter of our own mind, our own thoughts, our own beliefs, our own fears. And yeah, to have a different perspective and to hear yours as well. It helps me grow as well. And hopefully we're helping other people, you know, think about things a little bit differently too.
Yeah. Well, I think that we've talked a little bit about how people can start to reduce their fear. But I think maybe we can, and in fact, what I'd like to tell people right now is I've written up an ebook about this subject. And so if you're interested in getting a copy of that ebook, I was trying to set it up on a website, but I haven't got that set up properly yet. But if you want a copy of that ebook, just send an email to lifematterstv@gmail.com. That's lifematterstv, all one word, @gmail.com. And I'll make sure you get a copy of that ebook and you can read through it. But basically what I want to say is there's really only 4 steps that you need to do in terms of reducing your fear and starting to build more confidence. As we mentioned and we suggested here, the first step is getting awareness. Well, how can you get awareness about a fear? I think the way you do that is you figure out what it is you really want first. So write down in detail what it is you want and feel it in your body. You know, do a full visualization process and get a sense of, this is something I want to manifest in my life. Make that really, really clear, solid, and strong. Right, Tommy?
Yeah, right, David. Sorry, I was looking at the chats there, and I'm like, I'm trying to see what people are asking about. So you caught me, Dan. You tell me, I'm like, damn it, I was looking at the chats.
That's okay, man. That's cool.
But yes, but coming to awareness of what it is and doing that first step of what it is I want, and then you start looking at what's blocking me from getting there. And there's going to be fear in there. You're going to find fears.
Exactly, because once you know what you want, and this is, I think, really, it's got to be something that has a gut level knowing to it, because, you know, okay, so I want that apple over there. How much fear is going to stop me from getting that apple? You know, but if I want to completely change my life and start a brand new career in a completely different field, wow, there's going to be lots of stuff coming up for me. Now the question is, am I really seriously wanting that, or is it just a fantasy in my mind? If I'm seriously wanting it, I'm less likely to be held back by just these little mini fears that are going to show up from time to time. But what is true is the moment I start creating a clear picture of what I want, that's when the resistance is going to start showing up. And this is where step 2 comes in. Because now what you can do is you can spend time kind of meditating. I think it's really, really important, first of all, to feel the fear. Don't try and avoid it, because all that does is it pushes it out of your awareness and into your subconscious, and that's what causes the voice to just keep yelling at you and beating you up. So the first thing is allow yourself to feel that emotion. And try to feel it without judgment. In other words, don't blame yourself or make yourself wrong because you're feeling afraid, but instead just feel it. And as you're feeling it, notice if there's any story that comes up. And the story is what's going to have the details of what it is you're really afraid of. And it's going to show up in the form of something like, I am afraid that, and then there's going to be something following that. Or I'm worried about blah, blah, blah. Or you may have it show up a slightly different way. If I do X, then Y is going to happen. And so on. There's all kinds of different ways this can show up. Write those down.
Yeah. Yeah,
you want to say something there?
I'm just going to emphasize the writing, because it sounds like such a simple thing, and the people are like, what? Write it down? That's not going to free me. Yeah, it does. It actually does. Somehow getting stuff out of the dark closet in our mind and onto a white piece of paper or onto a computer screen, it helps dissolve it. It helps to separate what was a hidden, gnarly little thing tucked away back in the recess of our brain that is affecting our decision, but we don't know it's there. And it takes it out of that dark closet, and it puts it out, and when it puts it out on the page, you're like, really? Really? I'm afraid of that? When was the last time anybody really laughed at me out loud? That was 3rd grade they did that. Why am I still hanging on to that crap?
Yeah.
And that's what happens. You write it down, as David said, the story behind it, and you'll see where it came from, and you'll be like, man, and then you can decide. I'm not going to tell you to drop it. You decide, as an adult, as an intelligent human being, you decide whether you want to hang on to that bag of rocks or not anymore.
Right. And then so once you've got that, you can now start looking at each one of these fears a little bit more objectively. You can ask yourself the question, think of it from 2 perspectives. One is the risk of the fear actually coming true. What is the likelihood that it's actually coming true? And you can just give it a number between 0 and 1. Now this is called probability theory, by the way, and the numbers from 0 to 1 are, real numbers, so they're fractions and everything else in between there. But the idea is if it's at 0, it means there's no chance that it's ever going to happen. If it's at a 1, it's absolute certainty. And anything in between is just your own gauge of how likely you think it is that it's going to happen. So if you have a sense that it's highly risky, then you're probably not going to engage in whatever it is you want. But if it's no risk or minimal risk, you may go ahead and do it. The other thing that you should look at is a second dimension of this exact same question is, all right, regardless of the risk, what's the likely impact or consequence to me if this actually happens?
Yep.
What is really going to happen to me? Now again, if the impact is like absolute destruction of you, that's probably something you don't want to do. But if it's just, if it's just some imaginary thing that you have going on, then you can say, well, the impact is actually pretty low, even if it does come true. And what I've got a little graph in my ebook that shows, it shows the relationship of these 2 variables. And of course, if something is high risk, high impact, that's something you probably don't want to ever do. But if it's low risk, low impact, go for it. It's pretty easy to figure it out when you can see it on paper like that.
Yeah, putting it on paper is the magic trick here. David, thanks for the ebook. That's an amazing gift, and I think we can wrap up today's talk.
Yeah, we are kind of running out of time here.
What's on the agenda for next week?
Well, I want to let people know we have our very first guest showing up next week. That's going to be Audra Irwin, and she is just an amazing, bubblicious person who is full of life. What people don't know about her is that she is one of Tony Robbins' trained coaches.
Yep.
And so she's going to be coming on and sharing with us, and we're going to be talking about how to have the life you really want. It's going to be exciting. We're going to have a lot of fun, and we're going to be on again next Friday at 11 a.m. So please join us.
Pacific time. Love everybody. Bye for now.
See you around, Tommy. Take care, bro.
See you, David.
Bye-bye.